Hey there, friends and enemies, Jopie here again, and today I want to talk about my time with the Throne and Liberty beta, as I did very much enjoy it, despite the mixed criticism that I've seen online. However, I do understand why it might not appeal to everyone, and if anything, I think it personally will be more of a success on console, potentially, than on PC. So I'll explain why I think that and some other reasons why this game is up and down right now. It does sound like there are some changes coming in the near future that will help this game ahead of the September launch here in the West. But let me just jump right into it and say that I enjoyed this game for a number of reasons. One, it's absolutely gorgeous. As a MMO, it looks beautiful. Some of the traversal is fantastic. Being able to change into different creatures to get around the map, I thought was very, very interesting. I think the general overview of the story that we've seen so far is pretty good. The voice acting's good. There's a lot there to like and to really enjoy. And I think the combat looks like it has potential. I enjoyed it in spurts, especially in the beginning, but then it fell into some familiar trappings that a lot of MMOs do, where you do a bunch of kill some nonsense creatures to learn your abilities. And I don't know if it's just me, but it feels like we've move past needing that and needing it to be so extensive in the beginning of the game, because everything that I've heard is that the combat really opens up once you get to end game, once you get to the large scale PvE, large scale PvP. And unfortunately, players aren't going to get to that point if they have to suffer their way through the slog of the campaign, the fetch quests, all that kind of stuff, the stuff that's just not as enticing. And so I really do hope they pare that down a little bit. But it does, like I said, it sounds like they're moving some of the endgame abilities forward, so you'll be getting them a lot sooner. I do feel like the game also can be likely overwhelming to new players, because when you first start the beta, at least, you start off with all these abilities. You start off with 4 abilities for your primary weapon, and then 4 abilities for your bow as well. And so right away, there's a bunch to try to keep track of, and it can be a lot to consider. However, not necessarily a bad thing as you get towards the end game. And this is where I find it interesting, because as a console player, somebody playing with controller, it did feel pretty fluid compared to other MMOs that I've played, as far as the abilities are all there as good options within reach. And I do also think that on console, there's less competition, so it feels better when I don't have a lot of other things to judge it by. I think ESO is pretty good overall, especially with some of the newer updates, but ultimately, Throne and Liberty feels like a step forward, at least on console. Final Fantasy XIV doesn't feel the same. It plays very, very differently. Looks very different, especially when you're doing dungeons and stuff. And we don't have all these other options on console. And there hasn't been a MMO in recent times that has really blossomed on console either. Black Desert has been on there recently, more recently, but never really took off in the way. We had Terra for a while, some other options that I ultimately enjoyed for a bit, but this does feel like it could potentially be a success on console, where an MMO is really a thing that I feel like players could latch onto really easily. One of the question marks, though, is this game is launching in September here in the West, but we're also getting this fall New World Aeternum, and I think only one of them will ultimately be a success, and I'm incredibly fascinated. I will be playing the upcoming New World beta as well to get my thoughts on that, so I will give you guys feedback on how I see that as a console player. But it feels like both of those two games have really tried to capture the casual player and console market in a way that will put off hardcore PC MMO players who are used to these types of games, who want the higher skill ceiling, who want things to be a bit more intense. And I do feel like because of that, they might have to adjust who the base audience ultimately is. So again, incredibly fascinated to see how that all shakes out. I will be checking both out as much as I possibly can because I do want to give each of them a fair shake, and I'm just happy that we have options, to be honest. This is something that I've been long asking for and really wanted a long-term MMO on console that I really enjoy. I was late to the party with Final Fantasy XIV, and now it feels like a slog getting through the main story quests up past the Realm Reborn quests, which is really unfortunate. ESO feels like everyone is ahead of the game with that, and as somebody who would want to make videos and content on it, I'm so far behind it just feels like a struggle to catch up. I know there are alternate paths in ESO and it's not that difficult, but this feels like a fresh start with New World and Throne and Liberty coming to console to be a console creator for both of those games. So I'm really, really excited about that. Ultimately, I think one of them will be successful. At this point, I don't know which one. I'll probably have a verdict on my potential guess on which one I think will be most successful after the New World beta. But for now, again, I enjoyed my time with Throne and Liberty. I've watched some of the high-end gameplay from people who grinded out to full end game builds with the mix of like a staff and a great sword or something, a wand and a great sword. The combinations are insane to me, and it really does feel like combat, once you're able to upgrade and adjust your abilities, the visuals become even better, and you start fighting these massive battles against giant bosses, against hordes of enemy players. I think that's where the game really is going to shine, and you only got a small taste of that in the beta, so I do feel like that is going to be difficult. But again, players have to get to that point, and that's something that some of these games often miss, is that while endgame is a massive priority for MMOs and other live service games, you need to give players a chance to get to that point, and if the game's not fun, they won't ever. So my own opinion on that one, but I do hope one of these two is successful. New World has really struggled since its initial launch. It was so incredibly hyped at first, and now it's pivoting in a big direction. Throne and Liberty feels like it could be successful. Everyone's worried about the monetization, but they've toned that down somewhat, and now it feels like there is the potential for one of them to really take off. And I hope that is the case, because in order for either of these to be successful, they need to not only obtain a massive player base that's large enough for people to consistently have people to group up with, but also retain that as well, so it can be successful not only for a month or so, but long term as well. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to see me cover Throne and Liberty in detail, let me know in the comments down below, because I'm really looking forward to the game, and I will be making videos on it as far as my experience goes, builds stuff that I find, all that kind of good stuff. Let me know in the comments down below. My name is Jopa. Have a good one. I'll catch you all later.